Hey people, you found the Hillbilly Voodoo channel. This here is our homemade powered wheelbarrow, the dumper from the dumpster. So far we've taken an old lawn tractor and a bunch of stuff that we've got laying around here on the ground obtainium, and slapped it all together to build a self-propelled wheelbarrow. We're pretty much at the point of the project now where there's just a few things to wrap up and this thing should be able to be loaded and start trucking things around the yard. Today I think we're going to tackle the fuel tank and the wiring. So stick around, see what kind of hillbilly voodoo we have to come up with to build a fuel tank and figure out the wiring. So I had this fuel tank I was going to use on this project. It was off of an old pressure washer. It's been laying around out in the ground there forever. And after taking the lid off, it's super rusty. I don't know if you can see down in there or not, but yeah, it's pretty gross. Tried to clean it out and, well, I stuck water in it to rinse out some of the cooties and the water came out the seams just as fast as I was sticking it in the top. So that's obviously not going to be much of a fuel tank. So what I'm thinking here is, the only part of the fuel tank that seems to be any good is the cap. I can clean that little bit of rust off, and maybe the metal around here where the cap mounts onto. So I think we're going to have to build ourselves our own fuel tank. It's not really a big thing, but it's a thing. It'll be custom to this machine and probably work better than this tank would have worked anyways. So let's go out to the piles of ground obtainium and see what we can come up with to build a tank out of. So what I'm thinking is maybe we'll put our tank in this general vicinity right here. Now I was going to build a tank that'll go like that across there, like a log laying on its side. But why? Why do I have to do that? I don't have to do that. I can put it wherever I want. If I put it across this way, then all these cables and stuff will probably be banging on it and whacking into it and stuff. And if I ever have to service a carburetor or anything, I'd have to take the fuel tank off to get out all that stuff that's in this general area here. So now if I build a tank that's standing like this, like a tree instead of a log, put the gas cap right about here, where when you're running around out in the yard and this machine just suddenly stops moving and you can't figure out why, well, hell, you can just take the gas cap off and realize that it's out of gas and yeah, put gas in it and keep on going. So yeah, it kind of sounds like a good spot for it. And the only real hot thing around is the pipe, and that's way down. Exhaust pipe's way down there, so should be a good spot. I don't know. What do you guys think? Yeah, should work. I think I have some exhaust pipe out there. A short chunk that was left over from another project that just might do it for us. Let's go wander around and see what we can find. If I remember right, it's leaning up right close to the door here, because that's where the good stuff usually ends up being, is close to the door, and the stuff that frustrates me and aggravates me gets thrown even farther. So yeah, there's a piece of exhaust pipe there. Kind of looks like maybe 3-inch. We cut off a chunk maybe a foot long. Should give us a fair size fuel tank. It's enough for the putting around the yard. Won't have too much fuel in it that it will end up going sour before it gets burned up, and won't be too big a tank that I'll cry when I need to fill it. So let's chop a chunk out of that and build ourselves a fuel tank. Now you see how this grinding cutoff wheel has a big huge chunk missing out of it like that? You should never ever use a grinding wheel that's broken like that. It could probably fly apart more than likely hurt you. So we cut off about, well, probably about a foot of that pipe there. I got another chunk of scrap here. I'm just gonna trace around the bottom of it so that I can cut out a circle and make a bottom to this tank. Nothing super special here, guys, just a felt pen and a piece of metal. You don't need a bunch of fancy plasma cutters to do fabricating. We're going to chop that out with that grinder right there. A little circle. We'll weld it in. There'll be a bottom on our tank. So we got our little circle welded onto the bottom there, and I took the lid and top part of that rusted tank, cut it out in a circle exact same way, and welded that on there. So we got our tank now. Now what I need to do is make a nipple coming off the side of the tank so that I can stick a rubber fuel line on there and we can get the fuel out of the tank and into the carburetor. So we got a bolt right here. I'm going to stick that in the lathe, build a nipple out of it, or try to, or maybe I'll find another bolt, one that's shorter, because that's pretty long. We don't need one that long. So we'll go grab another bolt and we'll see what we can make for a little nipple barbed fitting type thing. I found us a different bolt here. There's no sense in using a good bolt when we're just going to be taking all the threads off anyways. This one's shorter, so we'll stick this in the little lathe. Yes, the small lathe again, just because it's a small bolt and it's nice and cool in this room. We'll pull all the threads off of it and then machine the head down round so that we can drill a hole. We'll leave a little bit of a shoulder on there that we can weld to and build ourselves a barb fitting hose nipple type thing out of this. Now we got ourselves a little nipple barb fitting thing here now. That bolt, just bored a hole through it, turned her down, made it look like a nipple. Now all we got to do, drill a hole in there, weld her in. Now I know there's people out there right now saying, why did you take all that time to build that stupid little nipple? You could have went to the store and bought one. Yeah, I could have went to the store and bought one, but it wouldn't be something that I made. And it would have cost me $6. And the store is over a half an hour away. So I just saved myself a trip to town, which would have took over an hour there and back. And the amount of money that it took me to buy this thing, plus the gas, all that other stuff. It's kind of what this channel's about, people. Use what you got to make what you want. Save some money. Maybe not even saving any money. You might end up spending more time than the money's worth. But guess what? You made it yourself, and that counts for more than anything. So I'm going to poke a hole in this tank now, weld this nipple in there, like that, and we'll have ourselves a fuel tank. Now that we got our little nipple welded on there, we need to build some type of bracket that we can stick this fuel tank in and hang it off the side here. If it wasn't going to be holding fuel and I wasn't worried about it vibrating and cracking and stuff, I would just weld it right to here. But this might not be a good idea for where this fuel tank goes, and it might need to be removed, so why not just build a bracket that will hold the tank, and then I can just hose clamp around it to hold it in place, and if it needs to be removed, then it needs to be removed. If it ever needs to be cleaned or patched or repaired, it'll be easier to take off too. So I have some little 1-inch strips of metal left from building this battery box, so I'll take those and I'll shape them round to kind of hold the tank like a, I guess kind of like a fire extinguisher holder type thing, and then we'll run a hose clamp around it and hold it in place. So let's go bend some of those little pieces of steel and see what we come up with. If you guys have access to an anvil or anything with a little 90-degree bend like that, bending thin stock like this is pretty easy to do on an anvil. So if you don't have an anvil, well, maybe you should build yourself one. This is just a bunch of chunks of old grater blade welded together, and served me pretty well for the last 30-something years. So necessarily need fancy metal rolling and bending tools to do metal work. You just got to kind of think outside the box sometimes. But I guess it's not really thinking outside the box when I'm pretty sure they didn't have fancy metal rolling tools when they were building the first horseshoes. There we go. Got ourselves a bent piece of metal that fits that profile of that pipe almost perfectly. Our bracket's welded in there now, and they're pretty strong. Let's see if we can strap our tank in there with that hose clamp and see if the tank's going to be in a good spot or not. The fuel line is right here. Got a fuel filter in there, so should plug in, be ready to go. Let's clamp that thing in there and see if it's going to interfere with any of our controls or our handle, or yeah, if we're going to pinch ourselves in anything. Well, let's just find out if it works. Why does it always seem like the hose clamps are either too long or too short? Never quite exactly what you need. I guess that's why they're adjustable, right? Well, I'm pretty sure I'm going to have to crash into something pretty catastrophic for that to go anywhere. And if I do, it'll probably be the least of the plant worries. Looks like we won't smash any of our appendages on here. Might have to figure out where scrap these cables so they're not going to get all screwed up here. But yeah, kind of looks like it's gonna do what we need it to. Cool. My fuel line will plug on there. Oh, it's a pretty good tight fit, that's for sure. Probably won't even need a clamp. A few zip ties and maybe routing the hoses and stuff where they're not going to chafe, but it looks like a real thing. Guess pretty much now all we got to do is figure out the wiring. It's kind of parts of the project that I'm not really super stoked on is wiring, but it's got to be done, so let's get at her. Well, this is part of the reason why I hate wiring. We got this big rat's nest of wires here, and Briggs & Stratton engines usually only really need one wire to go to the starter solenoid to activate it, and one wire to ground out the coils to stop it, and I think there's 2 wires for the charging system. So you can guarantee that 90% of this stuff in here, all that mess, was for all the safety sallies that they have to put on these things for people so they don't accidentally kill themselves with them. So I think the first thing we need to do is get a battery that actually works, because we just used that battery for the sizing. It's dead. So let's go outside and grab a battery that's actually got some juice to it, and we can start testing these wires and see what we need and what we don't. So the battery that I know that is good, because I was just using it yesterday, well, unless the gnomes killed it overnight, is in the tracked wheelchair here. So we'll pull this battery out, take it in the shop, and see what we can do to figure out where all those wires go and what's got power and what doesn't. Well, we got this wiring somewhat straightened out here. We eliminated all the safety sally switches that go to everything. What these switches do is when you sit down on the seat, pushes down on the switch, opens up the circuit, that grounds out the coils. Now, what I mean by that is on Briggs & Stratton engines, a lot of the small engines, as soon as that engine starts spinning around, it's making spark to the spark plugs. In order to stop the spark going to the spark plugs, you need to ground out one of these wires. Now, for some reason, somebody had been monkeying around in here and none of the wires were the proper color coding, so I'm guessing as to which is which. But anyways, this switch, when it's like this, it's in the closed position. It's popped up. It's grounding out those coils so you're not getting spark to the motor. The engine stops or it won't fire up. What this switch also does, a lot of these safety switches, is they open the circuit when they're popped up like that to the starter wire, the wire that goes to your starter solenoid, so that it won't even start. Like the motor won't turn over. It's there to keep you from killing yourself. Like if you're climbing underneath it and sticking your hand in the blade, you can't turn it on, kind of thing. When you jump off the machine and you're running yourself over with it, as soon as you jump off the machine stops and the blade stops, all that kind of stuff. So we don't need any of this stuff. We don't have a blade, we don't have a seat, so all this stuff can go away. All we need is the ground circuit, which I'm assuming that this is a ground circuit. It's usually the one wire that goes underneath and up into the motor. This could also go to the charging system. I'm kind of guessing here. Doesn't really matter, but we'll find out here in a minute. If it stops when we turn the key off, then we know it's doing its thing. We have the other charge wire, comes out of the motor or out of the stator, goes into the key switch, provides our charging, charges our battery, stuff like that. So if we've done this all right here, then when we turn this key, this motor is going to spin and hopefully start up. I've put a little bit of gas in the gas tank. If for some reason this ground wire doesn't work to shut it off, or the other wire that I have sticking out of the motor here that I don't know where it goes to doesn't shut it off, we can pull our spark plug wires off to shut it off. And if that doesn't work and we're getting zapped trying to pull those off, we can always pull the choke, shut it off that way. So let's crank this thing over here and see if it actually fires up and if we've done something right today. So as you can see, it runs. Now let's see if it actually turns off. So yeah, we guessed on the right wire. 50-50 chance, so kind of looks like we did our guesstimate right. Now, I'm not going to solder any of these connections together yet because I'm not 100% sure that I want to leave this wiring the way it is or if I want to simplify it. But I'm just going to tape everybody up and then route all the wires up to our handle so we can control it from the handle. And by the way, you can see we don't have a belt on that transaxle connecting it to the motor yet. So that was another thing that I was using as kind of a safety for my own self being here, is if it's not connected to the transaxle, it ain't gonna move, is it? No. So didn't have to worry about running myself over, didn't have to worry about having our lever there in the right position or any of that. So I'm going to clean all this wiring up, tape it all together. I don't think I'm going to leave that solenoid there. Maybe move it down into here somewhere. Maybe underneath the starter because it'll be protected by the weather there a little bit better. But yeah, I don't think I'm going to leave it there. I'll find somewhere else for it. It's kind of hanging out there and looking like it just wants to be smashed off. So I'll tape up all this wiring and stuff here, and then we'll have to figure out somewhere where we can mount that key up there. Kind of want it on the handle because I may put a tether with a kill switch on it so that if this thing does decide to bugger off on you, or you trip and fall and the machine is running away, which I kind of have a tendency to do, is falling down, kind of want the machine to shut off. If I'm laying on the ground and it's running away from me, that might be a good idea. So I think I might have a tether switch around here somewhere. Not 100% sure, but I'll look around and see what we can come up with. Well, I kind of sort of neatened up that wiring a little bit and taped it up, routed it underneath, mounted that solenoid right there, and wrapped the wires all the way under, goes up through the handle, and I mounted our key up there. Easy place to get at, easy place to turn it on and turn it off. Should make it a little bit more safe to operate. Went and got myself a battery. First time I've had to buy a battery in a while. Man, have they got expensive. So as of buying the battery, I am into this project now for $77. Yeah, battery cost me $77. Can you believe that? Okay, enough of that whining. I think this project is at a point now where, now that I've spent $77 on it, I guess I better make sure this thing is actually gonna move. I got everything all hooked up, put the belt on it. Well, let's fire it up and see if it goes forward and backward, or if we just made a dud. Oh, wish me luck. but I think that maybe we're going to have to do a little bit of playing around with the engagement here. Because just the slightest little bit of movement of this stick is engaging it almost fully, and that's sketchy as sketchy can be. I could definitely see me running myself over with this. So somehow we're going to have to figure out how to reduce the amount of travel of our linkage, or the speed of travel of our linkage. So for those of you that have been following along on this build, this is just a recap for you. And for those of you that are just finding us, well, this is somewhat of an explanation of how this thing is working. That handle right there that you see, right there, goes back and forth. That controls the hydrostatic transaxle going forward and backwards. There's a steel cable that goes all the way down, around and underneath to this little control lever right here, forward and backwards on the transaxle. That's a boat cable that pulls and pushes on it. Now, see if I can get you down in there enough that you can see what I'm talking about. See that little lever there? See my pointer? See the lever? Oh, it's kind of blurry, but anyways, it's dark down in that hole, hard to see. Anyways, the only way that I can think of to reduce the speed of which that thing is engaging is to increase the throw of this little lever. Now, what do I mean by that? Some people probably don't understand what the throw of a lever means. Like, the longer the lever is, the farther the point where you attach that cable to has to travel to activate that lever. It's really short down there right now. It's hard to see, hard to tell, but really, really short. If I add some length to this lever, make it longer, and mount the cable up here somewhere so that it takes a longer throw. I know this is a no-brainer for some of you, but some people probably don't really understand the mechanics of certain linkages. But anyways, the only way that I can think of to reduce how quickly this is engaging is to make this lever longer, because it will take farther distance, right? Farther distance out. It's going to take more push and pull to make that thing go forward and backwards. Now, this tractor that we've built this machine out of, it moved at a pretty good pace. Like, it was probably faster than I can walk. I'm a big dude and I have trouble walking as it is, so we probably won't need full speed forward and backwards kind of thing. And the areas that I'm going to be working in and around, they're fairly tight, and we definitely don't want to be going a million miles an hour and crashing into things. So even if we don't have enough travel and throw in this cable, because remember, anybody that was following along, we built it only to travel about 1 inch. So if we come out and extend that arm, we're still only going to get 1 inch of travel out of that cable. We might not get full forward, we might not get full backwards, but we should be able to find a happy medium in there somewhere. I'm thinking that really slow backwards might be a good idea, because then you're less likely to run yourself over, and maybe a little bit more speed going forward, which is that direction there, forward, so that you can walk behind it and maybe it can drag you along and it will pick up your pace a little bit, or at least my pace a little bit. How am I going to extend this little lever here? There's 2 holes in that lever now, so maybe I can make a little steel plate that just bolts through those 2 holes with maybe a few more holes in it that I can kind of find a happy spot where we have enough travel to move the thing back and forth, but it's not super violent and it's not going to run me over. That's about the only thing I can think of, guys. So if you got another idea, you should probably make a comment, because yeah, we're kind of shooting in the dark here. I think maybe I'm going to think about this overnight. I'll leave it till tomorrow. That'll probably be a blink of an eye for you guys, but give me at least a few hours to think if there's any other way we can do this, but I really don't think that there is. So like I say, it'll just be a moment for you guys, but it'll be overnight for me. So while I was sitting here last night thinking about our problem with this lever and how violently this thing was moving and engaging, I figured, well, maybe I'll start painting it and something really intelligent will come to me. I don't really know if anything really intelligent came to me or not, but I was reviewing the footage of me standing here playing around with this lever and this thing lurching back and forth. And I realized that when I pushed this lever forward, it was going backwards. Now that's kind of counterintuitive. Anybody coming to play with a machine or something like this, if they don't know that, they're going to want to push it forward to make it go forward. I was also looking at it. Okay, I'm standing here, right? I'm a big dude. It takes a lot of force to move me. If I am pushing this lever forward and the machine is going backwards, as soon as that lever engages and starts the machine moving this direction towards me, I'm standing here, the machine itself is pushing against that lever and increasing the speed that it's going to go backwards. Same as forward. If I'm pulling on the lever like that and it starts to go forward, it's pulling, more or less, it's pulling, the machine itself is pulling the lever and increasing its own speed. That ain't going to work right. Somehow we have to figure out not only reducing how quickly that lever on the transaxle engages, but we have to reverse the direction of engagement so that when I'm pushing on that lever to go forward, I'm the one that's in control of pushing on the lever and not the machine itself. Yeah, don't let the machines control you. So I think the problem that we got to figure out first is how to reverse the direction of travel, which I can't do here because this is all a big huge, we got our gas and our choke and our key and everything here. So what we're going to have to do is figure out how to reverse the direction of travel down at the transaxle itself, and at the same time make that travel there less travel on the actual lever on the transaxle. Now, is that making sense to everybody? It's making sense to me, so it should make sense to you. So we got our Hogwarts pants on here now, so maybe we'll do some magic instead of some voodoo. And yeah, get our heads around it. Figure out how we're going to make it go forward when we push the lever forward. Now we got our linkage down in here, and we have to figure out how to get that lever there to go that way when that cable there pulls that way. Now I'm going to draw you guys a little picture of what I'm thinking about here, so I don't have to try to show you down in this little hole and maybe confuse you and me at the same time. So I'll draw you a picture and maybe that'll explain what I'm thinking here a little bit more. So right now we have our linkage, or our bar coming off the transaxle that is controlling it like that, right? You guys see that? Sure. So what I'm thinking, that's swinging in an arc like this, back and forth. It's being controlled by the cable, going back and forth like that. So what I'm thinking is another bar coming down like this. with a fixed point here that it's going to pivot on. Now the distance between here and here will be the same length as the distance between here and here, so we're not really changing the throw at all. Linkage will come across, connect to here, and then up here we'll put a few different holes. So when you're pulling on this bar here, so this is going to swing in an arc like this, right? This will swing, pivot on here, swing in an arc like that. When you're pulling on this, it will be pushing on that. You getting where I'm going here now? Pull there, it's pivoting there, it's pushing that way. So that's going to solve the problem of reversing the direction of throw of our cable. What it's also going to do with these multiple holes up here will change the throw of this bar here. If we go farther out, when the cable moves in and out, only an inch long, it's going to make this part here move less than an inch, right? So that's what I'm thinking of how I'm going to do this, or what I'm going to do here. How I'm going to do this is a different story. Down in here, I think I'm going to put a bar across, like a piece of ready rod or a piece of pipe or something across. That will be our pivot point. So obviously I'll have to move this cable mount up here somewhere, which I got lots of room in there. I can move it up and down all over the place that I want. That cable will attach to the top of that bar on that pivot and swing back and forth like that. Now, why am I putting a linkage between the bottom of this pivot and the top of this transaxle pivot? Why don't I just attach it to there, swing it back and forth? Because as something swings in an arc, you notice if we had a piece connected to the bottom of that, it would have to go up and down with the swing of that arc. So if we put a little bar linkage like that, it doesn't really have to go up and down, right? It's just going to pivot on that. So that's what I'm thinking we're going to do here. I'm going to go wander around out my ground obtainium, see what I can find for linkage. Pretty sure I have some little tiny Hyam joint steering type things around from other steering projects that might work on here. And if not, well, we can just use a bolt through a hole and just to see if this whole pivot thingamabobber is going to work or not. Yeah, we'll go with that first and see if it works. And if not, then we'll have to try a different plan. So let's go out to our piles of ground obtainium out there and see what we can find for some type of shaft to go through there. We'll find one of these random holes down here and stick a bar through there and build our little lever thing on top of that. Pretty sure we got something out here right by the door that we can use. Maybe, I don't know what we got here. No axles in there of any sort. Piece of pipe, it's too short. That piece of pipe's pretty big. Got an old axle down there. Oh, we got an axle out of a hand truck. Yeah, we've chopped that thing up pretty much. Stole all the pieces off of it. Maybe we'll add a bearing there from the hub. Well, maybe we'll use the bearing as the pivot. That axle looks long enough to go all the way through. Is there anything else here that's... Well, I'm sure there's something else, but this is right on top. Let's go with it and see what we can make out of it. So this is what I ended up coming up with. I took that bearing from that little wheel hub and I measured our lever down there, how much throw it has. So now this bottom pivot here has the same amount of throw. This rod is going to go through. I managed to find a hole down here that had the same matching hole on the other side. And this rod, just some freaky reason, went through the hole, so we're perfect there. So this is going to go like this. Have a cotter pin on either side here to hold this in place. Cotter pin on the outsides to hold this rod in there. This is going to connect to our linkage down on the transaxle, our little lever that goes back and forth, like that. And we have, from this hole to the rod is the same distance as from the rod to this hole. So that would be a 1-to-1. Then as we move up the holes, we'll get farther and farther away. So that will change the amount of swing of the arc. So let's stick all this stuff together and see if my goofy plans here are actually going to work. This is kind of one of those things where you got to hold your mouth just right to get everything in place, because they don't, well, I guess I can't say that they made the room because I've built the machine, so I haven't made a whole lot of room to put everything in here. I guess it's kind of the part of the project where you don't really want to blame the engineer when you're the engineer, right? Stupid guys never made it easy to service this stuff, put it together. I don't know what they were thinking. Yeah. Can't count how many times I've said that. This is kind of a lot like trying to find the remote when it slides down inside the couch. You just keep fishing. Find something good sooner or later. Maybe some Cheetos or something. That in there. Now let's put some nuts on there. Now I think we're going to start out on the third hole here. So that'll be, that should reduce our throw by approximately half, if I have all my thinking in order. Guess we're gonna find out in a minute, aren't we? Okay, that's in there, that's in there, that's all fairly tight. Let's put a cotter pin on the other side so this doesn't fall out. Put a cotter pin on the inside here. If we can find the hole. And that's all tight. Okay, let's see if we got movement here. Well, kind of almost looks like it's doing what I need it to. It's definitely reduced the throw. So, I guess the only thing we can do is fire it up and see if we've benefited from this at all, or if we just did a bunch of work for nothing. Wow, that is so much better. Aging, and it doesn't just try to bugger off on you and run away. I think I'm gonna tape up the fuel lines and tape up some of these things that are flopping around here, and maybe take it outside and test it out. Put some dirt in it. Well, guys, I think we're going to call that a real thing. That was pretty drama-free for a first test. I loaded that thing right up, as loaded as it will ever be with sand. It's probably well over 300 pounds worth of sand in there, and It handled it like a champ. Steers really, really well, very maneuverable, and it dumped effortlessly. I didn't have to lean on that thing at all. It just, I unlatched it and just gave it a little bit of a pull, and it flipped right forward and everything spilled out. Must have got the tipping point just perfect on it, which was a super fluke. There was absolutely no science involved there at all. So I think we're going to leave this project just the way it is, because it works. Don't really see any need to screw around with it anymore. I'll use it the way it is and see if any flaws or weaknesses come up, but besides that, it seems to be doing just what I planned it to do. Yeah, that's something that you make that other people screw up for you. It seems to work the way my idea was in my head. If you're liking this content, you like this video, give me a thumbs up. That would be greatly appreciated. If you want to see more of this stuff, you should probably subscribe so you can find us. Well, we print out one just about every week, so you can find us every week. So we're going to leave this one here, and remember, use what you got to make what you want. And thanks for watching, guys.